Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. If you haven't seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney up the street in Westborough at Myrick O'Connell. But this is not about my day job. It's about my friends Frank and Mary. If you've seen my presentations before, you know that Frank and Mary's goal in life is to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if you're in Southborough, that means you want to stay right here. You don't want to leave. And so the goal of this show is to really tell you about people you need to know, programs you need to know about in order to do exactly that. Our guests today are the perfect people to tell you about that. Doug, whom do we have today?
We have two guests today, Pamela Francis, who's the director of the Senior Center, and Cindy Beard, who is our outreach coordinator. And really, Cindy's going to spend most of the time talking about what she does, because she is a really invaluable asset to the Senior Center and to the seniors in Southborough. But I'm going to introduce Pam first and let her tell us a little bit about what's coming up at the Senior Center.
Well, hopefully what's coming up at the Senior Center is we hopefully we'll have, in addition to the front of our building, we're not sure exactly when that's going to start. We thought it might be in the summer, but it looks like, of course, with most construction programs, it might be put off a little bit towards maybe August or the fall. So we've had to kind of rearrange our programs because we didn't know what to expect with that. So we have some offsite programs in the summer. Instead of like summer barbecue on the lawn, we're going to have our summer barbecue at TJ's. And we're going to have another event over at Kennedy. So we're kind of going off-site for a change this summer. We also have some bus trips coming up. We've got coming up this week actually is a Wright's Chicken Farm trip, but we've got some trips in the summer. One to the horse races at Plain Ridge Casino and another one to the Woo Sox. So keep an eye out for those when the newsletter comes by. We also have a rescheduled shred day for July, let me check the date here. It is July 23rd. So if you want to sign up for that, give us a call. Our newsletter will be out shortly. So we've got a lot going on. It'll be a busy summer, and hopefully we will see that addition to our building sometime soon.
And Pam, can you just, for folks who are driving by going, what's that? Can you just give them a sense of what's going to happen as a result of the addition, what that's going to turn into?
It is going to give us some more space, basically, for programs. We have basically 3 large rooms out there that we divide, but they're, if you've taken classes here, you have to walk through one room to get to the other room. This is going to make that a lot better. And the other thing it will give us is a space for people to spend some time here, kind of out of the traffic zone, a place to sit. Hang out, maybe read a book, read the newspaper, watch TV, or chat with friends, or meet up with friends. So that's going to help a lot. So
that's great.
Hopefully we will see that sometime soon.
That's great. That's great. That's great. And tell us about Cindy Beard.
So do you want me to tell you about Cindy Beard, or Cindy Beard to tell you about Cindy Beard?
Or you can introduce Cindy Beard.
Cindy's our outreach coordinator. She's been with the department for 24 years, I think, for a very long time. So she knows the town really well. She knows the people really well. And we are super fortunate to have her on staff.
Thank you, Pam.
Thank you. Thank you, Pam. All right, I'm going to go talk to Cindy. Thank you for that information. I know there's a lot going on and all in person at the Senior Center. So it's a good thing. We're looking forward to the summer.
Yep. And if you need to sign off, Pam, obviously you've got your day's job. Cindy's been kind enough to give us some of her time to focus.
Great. Thanks for having me. And sure, Cindy, we'll give you a lot of wonderful information. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Pam.
So Cindy, has it really been 24 some odd years? Yeah.
I started in 1998.
Wow.
At the Senior Center when we were over in the Fayetteville Village Hall.
Mm-hmm.
I walked in with my resume and my youngest daughter on my hip. She's now 28, just turned 28. So it has been a long time. Most of my career has been spent here in
Mhm,
Southborough.
mhm. This is one of the really big pluses of living in a small community is we don't get a lot of turnover of folks, and they really get to know uh, the people and the town really intimately, and that's a really big help. So can you give us sort of like a 10,000-foot view of what you do? You know, what uh, what an outreach
Sure.
coordinator does?
Well, originally, the job has kind of evolved over those years. And when I first started, I just cold called seniors and said, hey, I'm new in town to this job, and uh, you've been here a long time. Can we chat? And you can tell me about Southborough.
Mhm,
And so I met some of those really wonderful farm families that or families that have been in town for that, that grew up in Southborough and were there for their whole lives and made Southborough that desirable community that it is now.
mhm.
So I would just spend time with folks, and in doing that, I learned more about what the needs of the seniors were at that time. And over the years, my job has developed into um, not only working with seniors, but working with adult children as well in helping support them. So basically, outreach is it's not the folks that come to the senior center and participate in our um, programs. However, I do sometimes help those folks, but it's more dealing with people who are isolated and maybe more frail or vulnerable, who don't get out of their houses as much,
Mhm.
or who are just needing support in staying in their homes and aging safely in their homes. So I might help them find services or ways in which they can do that, either by support, services that will support them in staying in their homes, or maybe helping them find ways to afford to stay in their homes.
Oh, good.
It's
So,
interesting that I was just doing this article. I do an article for your newsletters, and
Mhm.
this one is about living with memory loss. And really spoke to people about, so the last thing that you want to do if you think that you're having memory loss or that somebody that you're caring for has memory loss is like hide, and just hide in your house and pretend this isn't happening and hope there's going to be a miracle cure, as opposed to connecting with the community, regarding this as a disability, not a stigma. And one of the first calls, as I say, is talk to the folks at the senior center. Because there is people don't necessarily do that. They think the senior center, it's still for the older folks, it's still about bingo. It's like so much more than that.
Well, bingo is really fun, though.
And bingo is good. That's right. And I'm not criticizing bingo.
But
Yeah.
you're right. A lot of people, their first instinct is to circle the wagons and not talk about the changes that are happening. And I think that makes my job that much harder, particularly in relation to memory loss, because I know there are people out there that are struggling to care for their partner, their loved one, and I wish that they would make themselves more known. So, for instance, before COVID, I had a support group for people who took care of a loved one with memory loss. And the population changes. Someone goes into a nursing home, someone passes away. So the group had dwindled, and then COVID hit. And so since we are back in the senior center, I haven't really been able to start that up again because I have to, it's like you've got to find the people all over again, not those
Mhm.
people, but other people out in the community who are dealing with that. It is a little harder to identify the folks
Mhm.
that are needing that particular kind of support.
Yeah. And we know that a lot of older folks just don't want to reach out. They see it as a sign of weakness that they need support. And we
Mhm.
know that that's just not true. I mean, taking care of someone 24/7 is a huge job. And, I like to say, it really takes a village to keep a senior safe and at home. And
And
you
even
really
just
need
to
that kind of support.
to voice your frustrations and your
Mhm.
concerns, and you don't feel alone, you're not the only one. And
Right.
so just having a place to bring that is so important.
Mhm. There's a lot of, the senior population in Southborough is definitely growing like the rest of the population is. It's now
Mhm.
about 15% of the population. So there's 1,500 people or so over 65. And you never know when you're going to need that extra assistance. I think
Right.
this is what I say is that in a small community, what what you will find out if you're dealing with a senior with any kind of issues is that all the help you really need is really focused locally. It's not necessarily in Worcester, although there might be some doctors there. But the rest, the home care that you might need, the VNA, all that kind of thing is local. And
Mhm.
no one knows it better than the outreach people because they deal with it every single day.
Mhm. I will say that finding caregivers is becoming more and more challenging.
Yes.
I know, I try to start people off with Bay Path, for instance, and I know that
Mhm.
they're experiencing shortages and finding people that can respond quickly.
Mhm.
Um, but going back to your comment about people's reluctance to reach out to the senior center, it's always been my philosophy to respect people's wishes and boundaries. I never race in there and say, you need to do this, or I would do that. It's always take a look around and see what that person wants to present as an issue. And sometimes it's not even an issue. It's just getting to know each other. And then,
Mhm.
you may find out that someone needs assistance with
Yeah.
some area of aging in place.
It's a very good point. This is a very confidential service.
Mhm.
We don't uh, keep notes on it. We don't talk about it at the senior center. This is extremely confidential, and I think it is a matter of trust. People get to know you, and I think you know having been there as long as you have should give people confidence that we've been successful here because we can keep people's trust and
Mhm.
you can be very helpful to them and getting them the right type of services that they need or letting them know you don't really get the services. You say you need to reach out to these people or that person and
Right.
take care
Sometimes
of
I
them.
just make the connection for someone.
Okay. Yep. You
But
know.
also, the other part of helping adult children or,
Mhm.
a younger caregiver with someone, um, I always kind of turn the table and say, well, what if someone said to you, you can't drive anymore? How would you feel? you know?
Yeah.
And as I get older, I really tried to, it's really hard to imagine getting
Mhm.
old or being unable to do certain things. But when I
Mhm.
look around my house, I'm like, maybe having our laundry in the basement, it really isn't a good idea.
Yeah.
And I do
Yeah.
know way too many people that go into their basement to do their laundry.
Yeah.
Yes.
So,
Yes.
so are you finding post-COVID, now that you're actually going back to where you started, that you're actually having to kind of replicate some things that you used to do, and you're kind of outreaching to people, and just kind of in general, how do you do that? How do you do that
Well,
now, right?
um, during that period of time that we were all working from home, I developed lists. I had my lists of people that were receiving our caregiver meals, for instance. So I would have them on a call schedule that I'd reach out to them every other week. And then I had some other people that in my mind, I kind of put them on my top 20 and I would reach out to them on a regular basis. And then just so people knew that we were thinking of them, we made a list of everyone in town that was 80 and over and sent out little I don't know, I'm not sure what went out every time, brownies, a little goodie bag of something. And so in that way, I would call them, let them know a volunteer would be delivering this with no contact. So I have these lists, and then I'll circle back, and when I, recall, oh, that person, they were going to have surgery. I wonder how that went. So circle back and call them and check up on them. So post-COVID, I've really had to rely a lot on those lists and follow up on things that might need following up on. People were, a lot of people said it's so nice to know the senior center is thinking of us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It is. And that's the advantage of a small town again. I don't think
Yes.
people really appreciate it. How you don't get that kind of personal touch in a Framingham or a Natick or even in a Marlboro. They just don't have the staff to be able to do that. Think of the
Right.
initiative, how much that really takes to be able to reach it, plan it on a regular basis. I know, I mean, I've delivered some of the little plants and some of the little things, and people are really so appreciative. They just can't believe that, someone is thinking of them, because they
Right.
have been really pretty isolated.
I
And that's
know
still something that we deal with.
it's so many of our volunteers like you, Doug, or we have a little core people
Mhm.
that we can call and rely on. And for them, it's such a gift because, they get all the accolades, they get all the thanks and gratitude, and it's very uplifting.
It is very uplifting,
Yeah.
and we haven't had as big a core of volunteers because we've again, we're still coming back from COVID and
Mhm.
trying to get things going here. But
Right.
I just want to tell, again, emphasize to people, no matter what question you have about helping someone who's older stay in place, and Cindy's the person to call at the senior center. And so she's dealing with the children or the caregivers as much, or if not more so, than the actual seniors themselves. So it's important that just to call and say hello, tell her what's going on, so you can start. You don't want to be doing this when there's a crisis, when you're taking your elder parent or loved one to the hospital and you have no idea what's going to happen next.
That's a great point. That's a great point. But I think as you're describing it, I suppose for people who are now aging, right, or who are kind of aging in to this community, right, you're kind of not used to that. You're not used to there actually being like an agency, like a government agency,
Mhm.
that has a real interest in you. Typically during the great middle years, you're paying your taxes and you send your kids to school. And you hope the fire truck shows up, and you hope that the police show up if you call them. But getting used to there being really a community is kind of counterintuitional for people until
Mhm.
you get into it again, right? So
Mhm.
that must be it. So Cindy, for you, it must be, it's almost like consciously or constantly outreaching, because people are always aging in. Obviously, some people are aging out,
Right.
but for people who are coming in, just to be constantly, it must be almost kind of, you say, why I have to do this again,
Mhm.
but you've done this story so many times, but it's like it's always a new story for people who are coming in.
Right.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
is much of
And
your time spent out of the office, or is it mostly phone calls and emails and stuff from there?
I am not out of the office as much as I used to be when I first started. Um, More and more people know that I am there. So a lot of people just come into the office, or they'll call and they're able to come into the office for us to meet. If someone can't come into the senior center, I'm always willing to go to them. And particularly now that the weather's nice, we can meet outdoors or something, because I still am a little concerned about meeting with vulnerable populations face to face,
Mhm.
especially with this strain of COVID. You could be sick and
Right.
not know it.
Right.
So that is always in the back of my mind. But a lot of my time is spent in the office, and emails, calls, but a lot of face to face in the office as well.
Mhm.
Um, People will just wander in.
Right.
And they do know that we're there, and we get calls with lots of questions
Yeah.
I'm not equipped to answer. I love the calls I get around tax season. And I can barely do my own taxes.
But
Yeah,
we'll find a way for you to get them done.
That's
if you-
right. I always try
Absolutely.
to tell people, I may not know this, but I'll do a little research and
Mhm.
I'll try to dig up an answer for you.
Yeah.
right. And that's your point, is that there's nothing more confusing as anybody, but especially as a senior, than having a question. And your real question is, who do I ask this question to?
Right.
Mhm.
Because you just got no idea where to start. So the notion of
Yeah.
actually having an advocate,
Yeah.
and in many ways, what, you know, you provide a lot of that kind of, just the kind of advocacy that folks maybe in later years would get a geriatric care manager in order to provide, or whatever. You're really providing kind of very early case management for folks
Mhm.
got a
Exactly.
particular problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I won't call you if I've got tax questions. That's how. So Doug, I just want to go back to something that you had said, though. I know that you had, you know, you had talked in, you know, previous months about how difficult it was still to find, you know, even staffing people, you know, that you could pay in order to go
Right.
in. It has, for so many people, COVID has kind of faded away. So has that, but does that linger as a problem? And I guess that's to Cindy, to you too, in terms of, you know, the volunteers that you try to recruit. Does that linger as a problem?
You go, Doug.
It hasn't been a problem for us. It's just that there is really a big pent up demand, and still from COVID, where people are now wanting to get out a little bit more, wanting some extra help, and we just don't have the resources to fulfill all of those, at least quickly. You
I
know,
see.
again, there's always a turnover in people that we're working with, and so people will come eventually. But it's hard to get somebody that says, I need a ride to the doctor on Friday and it's Tuesday. It's not going to happen. There's just not enough folks to do that. You really have to plan. That's another good reason to get in touch with someone like Cindy to say, because a lot of doctors' visits are planned. You've got to let us know so we can help you find the right source where you can have that ride booked in advance. Or if you need someone to come in because you're going into the hospital and having cataract surgery, and you want somebody for a day to stay with you, you're not going to find that person in a week. You know, we really need to sort of get ahead of that. So don't make it a crisis when it doesn't have to be a crisis.
Yes, that famous sign from the secretary's desk, you know, your failure to plan is not my emergency.
Right.
If you can do it ahead of time, you're doing yourself a favor, as opposed to getting
Right.
mad at everybody because they couldn't help you at the last minute, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I always point out to seniors that not even in regard to short-term problems, but you never want to wait until your back is up against the wall and your stress level is high. You want to try to at least know what your options are before the crisis hits. That's never a good way to have to make decisions, and
Right.
you have fewer options and maybe even less control over the situation. And I know that people want to be in the control of their lives and make their own decisions.
Right.
Yeah.
And now for Cindy, for people who are seniors and are still basically healthy and kind of want to ramp up again, you know, can you talk about what the volunteer opportunities may be, what kinds of people, or what kinds of tasks you think would be really are there things that are now the demand is really, like as Doug had pointed out, in some cases just remaining unfilled for kind of lack of volunteers, and what kinds of people who would you be looking for to help out?
We actually are very, very lucky. We have people that have volunteered for the senior center that are real doers. And so as we get our programs going more, we have people that will help in the kitchen. We have people that deliver our caregivers meals. And we have people that we can call in a pinch as a sub for that, as well as any other kind of delivery thing. So we are lucky in that regard. We don't have a formal volunteer program. That is, in order, if you have that, you really need someone to
Mhm.
coordinate it, to keep your volunteers busy and fulfilled, and also to look for those opportunities. So it's like ongoing upkeep. And we
Yep.
really don't have that formalized.
Right.
But
Right, because
anybody
as you
that
say,
wants,
it has a staffing function to it. Supervising the volunteers
Mhm.
right.
in itself is something,
Right.
right?
But
Right.
we, anybody that wants to be involved at the senior center, there's always opportunities to participate on the board or, well, I don't know if there's openings. I don't know if there's a finite number of board members, but Doug, you
There
would know
is, but
that.
we're going to be adding one or two coming up. As a matter of fact, we're going into a strategic planning session at our board meeting in July. And so we're going to have a better idea of, as we look, because the whole environment for seniors is changing. There's a whole younger group moving up, but there's a whole older group. There are many, many more residents now that are in late 80s, early 90s than we've ever had before. And that's a whole separate issue. So things are constantly changing. So I think people should stay in touch. And they should stay in, if they're really interested in some other volunteers, they should contact Bay Path as well, because they do Meals on Wheels. They do other things where they can always use extra hands or substitutes, and you sort of work your way in.
I do want to say one thing about our volunteers that work on the handyman program. There's not many, there's
Is
like
that who's
3 of
building
them.
is that who's building the addition?
No.
No?
But we have a program where if someone needs a grab bar installed, that's a tough thing to go out and find a tradesman that will come to your house and do that small job. So we have these very handy people who are willing to go into the home, look at the job. They may even go to Home Depot, buy the proper items that then they'll be reimbursed for. But that's an invaluable thing. And those are volunteers who serve in those roles. And they're really terrific.
Yeah,
That's
We
a
know we can
absolutely.
always
great
count
idea.
on them.
That's
Yeah.
a great, I've never, I do a lot of work in a lot of senior centers. I've never heard of that idea before.
Mhm.
It's just so sensible because you have so many people, mostly guys. I know the
Mhm.
occasional woman who just loves being a handy person, like my
Mhm.
wife, thank God, because I can't. But for people who have those skills, and because you can, on the flip side, you can never find that person to do that little job.
Right.
anymore.
Exactly.
Though that has
Right.
disappeared, completely
Right.
disappeared. So to actually be able to have somebody to do it, that's a great thing.
Yeah.
Oh, these
So-
shows are great. I learn something new every day. So, Doug, thank you so much, again, for
Oh.
finding these, great guests. Although Cindy is a terrific guest who has been there forever.
Right.
And as I said,
Yeah.
Cindy, before we started the show, so I'm getting so bad that I haven't seen you for a few years and I hadn't remembered you. This is not a good sign, right? So I have to go back to the senior center to go back and say hello. But
Well,
Cindy,
it may be because I stay under the radar and.
Right.
You know.
no, it's me. It's all about me. So Cindy, thanks a million for doing this. This
Yeah.
was really,
You're very
I think,
welcome.
helpful for a lot of people. And Doug, thank you. And folks, this is the great hidden resource in your community. Cindy wants to know you, right? She wants to know you, and she wants to know you. She'd love to know you if there's an emergency, but she'd really like to know you if there isn't. So you can just have a conversation and she can get a sense of who you are, so that if something comes up, she can really help you better. That's really what you're doing. You're helping yourself by stopping by the senior center, just giving them a call. It's just a really valuable thing. And Doug, you've just played such an important role with the senior center and the council on aging there. It's a wonderful team effort. It's a wonderful. It is a wonderful village. Southborough is a wonderful village, right?
Yeah.
Which is just a special place.
Yeah.
So Cindy, thank you so much. Doug, thank you
You're very
so much.
welcome.
Folks, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you in the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Southborough. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good summer.
Thank you.